Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to Cycles of Time. This is your cosmic energy report for the week of June 9th through 15th, 2025. And this weekly vibe this week is called Gathering Together. We're focusing on Jupiter in Cancer and the Sagittarius full moon this week. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, meaning that it's kind of like the red carpet guest of honor sign for Jupiter to be in. And so that's happening Monday after spending 12 months in its detriment in distractible Gemini. When I refer to exalted and detriment, these are planetary dignities where in traditional astrology, planets were seen to be at home or kind of guest of honor or in a place of detriment in different signs. And so referring to this, Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, meaning that it's just pretty uncomfortable there. Jupiter and Gemini are kind of opposite energies, where Gemini is very mercurial, which is a sign of a planet of knowledge that is all about kind of an exchange of information, whereas Jupiter is about kind of looking at the horizon. Jupiter's more Sagittarian or Piscean energy, which is kind of this big picture, whereas mercurial Gemini energy is very close to home, in the neighborhood kind of thing. And so Jupiter was not at home in Gemini, but now reaching into Cancer, it's a very fertile place for Jupiter to be. So Venus entered Taurus last weekend, as I mentioned, which is her home sign. And so with both Venus and Jupiter in signs that they feel home in, this next week and month and even year will have us feeling more connected to the roots that nourish and sustain us, kind of amidst all the external froth and fray. At least that's what we're all hoping for, a little more of a container, a little more of a secure boundary around ourselves so that we can focus on what's important. I did write some horoscopes for Jupiter in Cancer last week, so you can find those on Substack. I didn't record them, so they're just on Substack. So if you'd like to receive additional horoscopes, I've been writing more and more horoscopes that are really fun for these bigger kind of middle and outer planetary transits to kind of look at the big picture of how your rising sign will be affected over the next year in this case. So subscribe on Substack at cyclesoftime.substack.com. I have changed it from astrosomatics.substack.com because the whole Substack is about cycles of time. So I just wanted to line up the marketing there and line up kind of the how it makes sense. So go ahead and subscribe at cyclesoftime.substack.com if you'd like to receive horoscopes in your inbox and additional bonus articles like that. So moving into this week's full moon, we have the full moon in Sagittarius on Wednesday, and that's opposite the sun in Gemini. And so we're entering the last human design gate of the season of the twins. And Jupiter, like I mentioned, is the planetary ruler of Sagittarius. So with both Jupiter changing signs and the full moon in a Jupiter-ruled sign, we're going to experience some mega philosopher adventure vibes this week as we deepen into the heat of the summer vacation mode here in the Northern Hemisphere, which is leading us up to next week's solstice celebrations. This week, channel the energy of Jupiter and Zeus in the fertile waters of the crab, as well as the fullness of the Sagittarius moon. The bigger picture might come as a welcome break from all the buzz and movement of Gemini season. So that's really what's being highlighted, is this polarity between buzz and chatter and kind of deeper waters and more universalized philosophies. That's what's on deck for this week. We are in the medicine wheel direction south, the direction of fire, the direction of youth, the direction of the mental realm. We're in the whooshing 5-element cycle, element of fire as well. In the pagan wheel of the year, you're in between Beltane and Litha. Litha is the summer solstice, and that is coming up next week. The zodiac season is Gemini until June 20th, also ending on the summer solstice when we transition into Cancer season. And then again this week in the I Ching and Human Design Wheel of the Year, from Monday the 9th to Friday the 13th, we are in the Gate of the Gatherer, which is Gate 45. And then Saturday and Sunday through next week, we will be in Gate 12, Heaven over Earth, which is the Gate of Caution. Moon phase is the full moon in Sagittarius on Wednesday the 11th. That's in the Human Design Gate of the Egoist. And as far as some planetary dances that are going on, Jupiter is entering Cancer for the next year on Monday, June 9th. And then we will have Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries on Sunday the 15th. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. I did write a lot about Jupiter in Cancer in my post, so I recommend digging into that if you're really interested. But to give you an example of what's going on this week, the main event is really this big shift of Jupiter into a new sign. So Jupiter stays in a sign for about an entire year. And over the past year, Jupiter was in Gemini, which is kind of this like scattering the seeds kind of energy. So as we shift into Cancer, it's kind of like settling into a deeper rhythm. And the great benefic Jupiter in Cancer is really giving slowness and wetness and more focus on instinct and kind of your gut than in a mental intellectualism that was Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Cancer doesn't want to be everywhere at once. It just wants to be home. This is not just in a physical sense, but home in your body, home in your relationships, home in your lineage, and home in whatever spaces help you feel held and whole. That's big Cancer energy, and Jupiter expands everything that he touches. And so this is expanding that sense of a desire for a secure crab shell to go into. According to the dignities of ancient astrology, as I mentioned, Jupiter didn't like being in Gemini because Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, is fast moving and chatty and kind of going in between places all the time. And so Jupiter represents this slower moving and grander and more universalized form of knowledge transmission. And so for that reason, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer and is at kind of his most generous and wise and life-giving, because it's all about nourishment. It's all about nourishing that big picture view. And this is kind of a placement for Jupiter as the wise matriarch or the protective ancestor or the wise storyteller who remembers the whole arc of the story, who can tell the whole arc of the lineage, and that moves on from the past into the next generation. So I see Jupiter in Cancer as, kind of a big ancestor energy and tapping into wisdom traditions that carry us forward into the future. So with Jupiter in Cancer, it's not about expansion for the sake of expansion in the way that it was when Jupiter was in Gemini, but it's more about kind of long-standing emotional truths and soul-deep safety and really growing what is meant to last. The past year with Jupiter in Gemini brought a lot of movement and dialogue and ideas and connections, especially I feel like for me in my 11th house, Jupiter in Gemini was like, the 11th house is kind of about society and friends and networking. And so it's this double whammy of just like a lot of activity. And this year is shifting that energy. Last year was a lot of questions and curiosity and trying things on for size. And so a lot of us, regardless of what house it fell in for you, it was really about stretching our voices and reworking how we communicate. Gemini is all about communication, kind of multitasking, getting into multiple projects or multiple communities. And it might have been, for the past year, that energy might have brought a little bit of overstimulation or kind of fragmentation along the way. Gemini really likes options and play and is really brilliant at patterns and puzzles and that type of problem solving, but it doesn't always know where to shoot the arrow to the horizon and when to land. Gemini is that buzzy, mutable pollinator air sign that I've talked a lot about during this season. It's represented by bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and that kind of, cross-pollination that's happening. But Jupiter, again, is that big picture, just, kind of that wise ancestor kind of energy. So now that Jupiter is diving into water, Cancer, this cardinal water sign, it's really shifting to that expansion coming from the sentimental feeling through care, through sensing what is ready to grow and also what needs protection. So Jupiter in Gemini might have had us saying yes to everything and everyone, and Jupiter in Cancer is inviting us to choose a lot more selectively what to say yes to, and to invest where the roots go deep, and to commit what really feels emotionally aligned and not just intellectually stimulating or interesting. So we're being asked to nourish what really actually feeds us deep down, and kind of making more slow cooked meals instead of grabbing a taco on the go, or just thinking, I can get it while I'm in movement. It's really a time over the next year to build structures and stories that hold our hearts, and to remember the wisdom of our bodies and of our ancestors and of the quiet spaces that are in between all of the doing that has to be done. This transit could bring a surge of interest in land-based living, stewardship, family systems, whether that's biological or chosen families, lineage and ancestral work, emotional healing, and kind of security that is really deeply felt through connecting with lineage. It's also a powerful time to reclaim the idea of protection and really start thinking about protection and security not as a wall around you, but as a container that holds you. I think that's a big difference. And Cancer is it has a protective shell, but it's not building walls. It's also very agile and very mobile. You think about crabs, and they're moving in and out of the water and up and down on vertical spaces, and they're very, very able to transverse, similar to the pollinator energy of Gemini. They are able to buzz from place to place. Cancer is different in the sense that it carries a shell around it so it can linger in one place for a long time. It stays still when it finds a place that is home, but it also knows that its home is on its back and that it can be mobile, it can be agile. It doesn't have to be building a giant castle or a giant fortress around itself. It's really just a vessel that it can be nurtured within. And so, I love looking at the animal archetypes in their reality, not getting too deep into the myth sometimes, because it's really just like, what is a crab? What is your relationship with the crab? And how can that crab energy be expanded? I've spent a lot of time around the sea and around crabs this year. I've been lucky enough to just travel a bit to the ocean out of my desert dwelling that I normally reside in. And it's really been fun to experience crab energy and see how they are super, able to move, really able to take their home on their back. And so boundary work is a big thing to think about with Cancer, and it can really help us understand with Jupiter in Cancer that boundaries are not barriers, they're not rejection, but they're devotion to a safe place, to a container for nourishment. And so you can ask yourself during Jupiter in Cancer, as the big planet is transiting signs, is asking, who and what are you willing to protect with your time and with your attention and with your prayers? This next year could be really fertile for building something real, something emotionally resonant and rooted in care. And it's really just about going deeper rather than bigger. Again, Jupiter is all about expansion, about making things bigger. But in this case, with Cancer being a cardinal water sign, this kind of like deep well energy, it's really all about kind of going deeper and really coming back together after the past year might have left us a little bit scattered or ungrounded. This is a really beautiful time as Jupiter enters Cancer this week to come back to what matters most and to that big picture of how we can show care in the world. So that is Jupiter in Cancer in a nutshell. As again, read on my cyclesoftime.substack article for more insights into how it might personally affect your sign. But we'll move on to the human design energy of the week, the gate of the gatherer, gate 45, which is in effect with the sun transiting through that gate from Monday through Friday. And for those of you who are new here, I do have a lot of new subscribers. So thank you for following me. Thank you for joining this project. And basically, I'm looking at the Wheel of the Year from a lot of different cultural perspectives and kind of noticing that the Wheel of the Year is sliced up into different kind of pizza pie slices, depending on the wheel that we're looking at. There are 8 holy days of the pagan Wheel of the Year, 12 zodiac signs, 4 directions of the medicine wheel, 5 elements of the Chinese Taoist Wuxing cycle. And then the human design Wheel of the Year is based on the I Ching, which is 64 gates or 64 hexagrams that are also corresponding with the zodiac, with all of these other wheels of the year. And so the sun transits through a gate or a hexagram of the I Ching every 5.5 days or thereabouts. And so each week on the podcast, I look into either 1 or 2 gates, depending on the timing, to see how that energy is kind of adding to the frequency of the zodiac season and of these more seasonal elemental energies. So this week, the Gate of the Gatherer is the main player for the week. So as Jupiter's moving into Cancer, and we're invited into a year that's expanding our relationship with safety and nourishment and home, Gate 45 is also kind of highlighting this inquiry where we are being asked to lead through care, and to build things not for domination or power, but for continuity throughout time. So Jupiter in Cancer and Gate 45 do have a similar energy that is about caring. Gate 45 is a leadership gate, and I talked about it a lot in last week's episode. I talked a lot about kind of personal anecdotes as I have my design sun and my North Node in Gate 45. But I'll keep doing an overview this week as well because it is really resonant with Jupiter in Cancer energy. Gate of the Gatherer, Gate 45, is located in the throat center in the human design body graph. And it is really like the voice of the queen, the voice of the king or the queen, the one who is saying, I have, but, I've gathered things together. But it's not about claiming things as personal possession, but more about sharing resources and leading through gathering and then distributing, this responsibility of distribution of what it is that we have. So Gate 45 speaks for the group, and understands that true abundance arises from wisely and equitably sharing what it is that we have. In the I Ching, hexagram 45 is called gathering together. Sometimes the human design gates and I Ching hexagrams can be quite different interpretations of that energy. Again, they're always based on the 6,000 year old I Ching, but in this case they're very, very similar. It's about alliances and collective force, shared vision. And in ancient China, this was the hexagram of gathering the clan under a single purpose, and that was often done through ritual. And it emphasizes the power of sacred assembly where people come together to share intention and trust with each other. It is a lake over earth. They're the 2 trigrams that are connected to form the hexagram of gathering together. And a quote from the I Ching says, lake higher than the earth, gathering together. Noble one sets aside weapons and tools and warns against the unexpected. So it's about the, cooperation of a group of people and how the ones who have a voice to power are using it to speak for the collective. That feels very resonant with the current moment, deciding what we care about, speaking for people who perhaps don't have the voice or can't speak for themselves, using that authority and power to affect the larger picture and the group. The trigrams of lake over earth for me evoke the image of a reservoir or like a lake, you know, a big reservoir where many different streams have converged together to provide a great resource of water for the community. So the traditional I Ching also warns with this hexagram that the one who gathers things together has to be humble and must consult others and shouldn't confuse leadership with specialness. It's really that leading from behind energy where the group only thrives when it is gathered around a deeper truth, not just a louder voice. And so again, that's very Jupiter and Cancer energy. It's about the big picture and it's about care. So gate 45 is a tribal gate. It's materially attuned. So it is a physical wealth, physical resources kind of energy. And so but it's also about the distribution of influence and space and our voices and whatever other resources we can cultivate. It's also known as the gate of the queen, and it's in that way thinking about a gate of true stewardship. This gate is part of the channel of the money line, which is 45 to 21 as they connect together in the body graph. And that is a design of material leadership where it connects the throat to the heart or the will center. And it's all about supporting your tribe through material, finance, and education and distribution of resources. So people with the 4521 channel in the body graph, when those two are connected, are really all about putting money to good use and to benefit their community through their resources. And so with gate 21 and 45, it's this collaborative energy pairing one who knows how to manage the resources with the one who gathers them together. So those two connected, if you have that activation in your chart, or if this sun transit is activating your 21 hanging gate, it's really about tapping into that energy of becoming sovereign stewards of resources, of emotional safety, and just knowing that you have a say and responsibility in who is getting fed and who is getting protected and who's getting a seat at the table. So it's a beautiful gate. It's in the Gene Keys, it has the shadow of dominance, the gift of synergy, and the city of communion. And so at the shadow level, the dominance is being that queen or king with a hoarding mentality of keeping things for yourself. And then with the gift of synergy, this energy is about weaving and inviting and including other people in that leadership. It's about collective sovereignty and nobody being left behind, knowing that the community is thriving because the gatherer ensures that there is a redistribution of that abundance. Kind of like potlatch or potluck energy. Bring it all together so that it can be given back out. And then at the city level, this kind of transcendent level in the Gene Keys, gate 45 is really all about recognizing that there is no separation between us at all. This concept of ownership and what's mine and what's yours really dissolves, and there's only oneness. There's only a shared collective field, recognizing that we even as individuals, we are not individuals. We are made up of a lot of different kind of bioorganisms. And I heard a word recently called holobiont, which is like the fact that every person in the world is made up of a consortium of creatures that have been in the business of self-fashioning for billions of years. And it's kind of about, it was an email from mutations.blog that I got, who is, I need to look up who actually was the person who wrote this together, but I thought it was super fascinating, this word holobiont, where every I is an ecology of selves. Sophie Strand is an author who also writes a lot about the relationality of being in a human body, how we are part of a larger ecosystem, and our bodies are actually made up of an ecosystem of other biological creatures, and we are not these kind of like distinct individuated selves. And so the city level of gate 45, the energy that we're in this week, is really a deep recognition of that, where like the I vanishes into the relationality, and it really recognizes that there is only oneness. And so there's a certain mothering quality to that, a certain kind of the reason why it's the gate of the queen rather than the gate of the king is that certain emotional nurturing, I believe, in kind of the historical reading of it, where it's about kind of being able to give things away to your children, to your community, because you know that you are part of that and that is what will ultimately nurture you. It's that reciprocity. And with Jupiter entering Cancer, Cancer is the sign of the mother, the nurturing parent figure. And so with that at the same time as the gate of the sun in 45, it's really helping us access this generosity and communal octave by returning us to what truly nourishes us, this continuity and reciprocity and presence and intimacy with the group. So that is the energy for the most of this week, is this mothering, nurturing, expansive, Cancerian kind of energy, although we are still in Gemini season. And so Wednesday, the full moon in Sagittarius in the gate of the egoist, gate 26, is going to bring back that Gemini energy, in the sense that Sagittarius and Gemini are sister signs, sibling signs across the zodiac wheel. And so a full moon is in any sign, anytime there's a full moon, it's always kind of highlighting the polarity of across the sky from the season we're in. So we're in, this early summer kind of energy. And so Sagittarius is highlighting that early fall kind of energy, and they have different vibes to them. And so it's always about integrating the opposites and the polarities on a full moon. And so I find that full moons can either make me feel really energized and happy and just like aligned if that polarity between the two seasons, between the two signs is integrated, if I've really worked on the integration piece. But if I'm so stuck in the moment, if I'm so in the solar season's energy, then the full moon comes along to shine a flashlight on the opposite side of the sky. It's this big reflective energy. Then I can sometimes feel a little bit out of sorts, or angry, or emotional, or I think that full moons are always intensified energy, but the flavor of that intensity can vary. And for me, it really does feel like I ask myself the question about, okay, how much have I integrated these polar opposites? And so that's why I love looking at full moons. I really love full moons. When I started this project back in 2023, I was tracking every full and new moon throughout the season, and the full moons really just helped me see the zodiac in a beautiful way, the wheel of the year in a beautiful way, as a series of polarities. You can't just be in one energy without the other, and the full moon just makes that very obvious. So this full moon in Sagittarius is arriving with a crack of clarity. Sagittarius is kind of, it's that centaur archer energy, that one who shoots the arrow across and just kind of knows what it wants and is ready to seek that adventure. So Sagittarius is all about the search for truth, whereas Gemini, on the opposite side of the sky, this season is more about holding multiple truths and hearing lots of perspectives rather than trying to find the one. So this full moon illuminates the polarities between truth and persuasion, between belonging and control, between authentic authority and performative leadership. This full moon is on this axis, is really looking at the difference and similarity between our search for meaning, that Sagittarian search for meaning, against our hunger for more information. And the Gemini Sagittarius axis, I like to think of as the axis of knowledge, where Gemini collects and gathers knowledge, gathers bits and bytes, and then Sagittarius synthesizes and puts it all together into that bigger picture Jupiterian energy. Gemini asks lots of questions and Sagittarius seeks the truth. And so together they really look at the tension between what we know and what we believe, and how much more we need to accumulate and how much we have it figured out. So this full moon and sun are also square the nodal axis this week, and so they're forming a grand cross with the south node in Virgo and the north node in Pisces. So we have the sun in Gemini, the moon in Sagittarius, the north node in Pisces, and the south node in Virgo. And it's making this cross in the sky. And when a planet is square the nodes of fate, it really represents a turning point or kind of a karmic crossroads between the collective past and the collective future. So in addition to that polarity between in gathering more and more information and forming our version of truth, this moon also is kind of challenging the south node in Virgo's addiction to perfection and analysis and self-doubt and hyper responsibility. The Virgo south node really clings to control as a means to prove its worth, but the Pisces north node on the other side of this square, this grand cross, is more concerned with surrender and faith and imagination and trust in the bigger rhythm. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces as well, and so it's all about that bigger picture energy. So Pisces is all about dissolving what no longer needs to be managed and micromanaged, and it reminds us that everything is everything and we are one, and it's that kind of Siddhic level of the 45 of this unity and with everything. And so that is where the North Node is. So as a collective, the North Node is kind of what we're hungry for as a collective at this moment in time. And so it's this notion that we're over the over analysis and the micromanagement, and we're ready to see the bigger picture. So this Sagittarian full moon energy really is in line with that. It kind of has the same energy as the collective North Node, and so making a square to the nodes, this moon can really bring up some of these deeper issues and tensions. When there is a cross in the sky like that, I like to think of it as a drum where you're pulling the different sides of the drum more and more taut, and there's this kind of beautiful tension in that four-way tension that can create a really resounding drum sound because you're having kind of equal tension pulled in these equal different directions. So with the moon in Sagittarius squaring the north and south node and opposite the sun, we're really being asked to release outdated versions of truth that were built to control and manage our fear. And with the sun in Gemini opposite the moon, we have to watch this season's general temptation to spin and distract and socialize and chat and chit and over-explain our way out of discomfort. Gemini and Virgo, the sun in Gemini and the south node in Virgo are more mercurial. They're more about like over-explaining and chatting and analyzing, whereas Sagittarius and Pisces, the other mutable signs where the full moon and the north node are really about that's that greater truth, surrendering to something larger and not paying as many attention to the details, shooting that arrow towards the horizon you want to go and just trusting that that's the right direction without asking too many more people for their opinion. So the full moon's human design activation, the moon is in gate 26, which is the gate of the egoist or the trickster, and the sun is in gate 45 during this full moon, the gate of the gatherer. And so the human design gates of the full moon, again, give an indication, a little bit more specificity about that Sagittarius-Gemini polarity. They just go into a little more detail about that. So the Sagittarius gate 26, where the moon is on Wednesday, is known as the gate of the egoist or the gate of the trickster, and it speaks to the power of persuasion. It is a gate that can twist truth for survival and embellish things to maintain control. But when it's in its highest expression, it also becomes a gate of integrity, where we choose to speak and deliver truths from the heart. With the sun in gate 45, which I've already talked about, it has the energy of leadership and distribution and collective care. And so the gatherer, the distributor versus the egoist, it's a pretty clear dichotomy. We can look at the 45-26 as this axis of knowledge through egoic manipulation versus community mindedness, and the tension between both really creates that electric feeling of the full moon, which again can be overwhelming or really beautiful, depending on how much you've integrated that binary of community mindedness versus your own deep egoic truth. And ego here is not a bad thing. I don't say ego is just our self. It's our sovereign self. And so this full moon really asks us to remember that our sovereign truth, what we know to be true, matters as we seek to care for the whole world, as we seek to distribute. And I think that's a really important message right now, because there's a lot to care about. There's a lot of resources to there's not so many resources. Maybe there are some resources, but there's a lot of people to distribute them to. And being in this energy of care, this energy of nurturance, it can feel pretty overwhelming to have the desire to care for the entire world, as many of us do. We see so many issues and so many problems out in the world, and it's sometimes hard to decide where to direct your energy. But the gate of the egoist, which is where this full moon is landing, is really a reminder to remember that your personal persuasion, your personal philosophy, and your personal ideals have a place in where to distribute and direct that energy. And it's not a selfishness, it's just a tapping into your own heart energy and recognizing, okay, I know what I believe in, I know what truths I have synthesized from all of the information I've gathered over my life, and with that I'm going to make a decision to act and to not get overwhelmed with a continuous accumulation of new ideas and new information, which can lead to a certain standstill and inaction because there's just more to take in. So the egoist here can be a really good thing, this full moon illuminating that place of self-awareness and inner truth. So some embodied themes for this full moon are releasing self-serving narratives that were crafted to maintain power, pride, or identity, reclaiming your truth as something that you feel deep down and not just something you've had to defend against, letting go of the need to be right or respected, but instead seeking to be real, feeling the parts of yourselves that still manipulate in order to feel safety or control or power, and returning to simplicity and to honesty and to this clarity of your inner voice, pointing your arrow in the direction that you know it needs to go, but knowing that by galloping to that arrow, you are going to serve the community as well. So let this lunation mark a turning point away from the accumulation of bits and bytes and toward a deeper and more unified wisdom. I don't know why I always say bits and bytes, but I really just like that. It's it feels like digital and physical, tangible things that we're accumulating in little pieces of information. So Jupiter in Cancer is really already going to be guiding us back to our emotional truth and leading from that heart-centered, mother-centered, nurturing place. And this Sagittarius full moon on Wednesday is also helping us leave behind that sales pitch that we've been saying again and again, and returning to what is actually ours to hold and to share. So yeah, lots of mutable energy. Again, those mutable signs, the nodes and the sun and moon, really creating that powerful drumbeat of understanding how to be in change and in flux and in flow without feeling like we can't also land on a truth. So that's the over-under. This weekend, the sun is moving into the gate of caution, away from the gate of the gatherer, and Jupiter in Cancer is going to square Saturn in Aries. So a little bit about the weekend's energy before we wrap up. The sun is entering gate 12, and Jupiter's entering Cancer and making a square to Saturn in Aries, and this combination of all these energies is bringing a moment of pause that's asking us to remember that not all expansion is helpful and not all momentum is sacred. After a very expansive and nurturing and caring week, the weekend is kind of bringing a certain standstill, a certain moment of pause to that energy. So gate 12, the gate of caution, in human design is called the gate of standstill. But I also think of it as the gate of refined expression. It's basically after gathering together with gate 45 earlier in the week, gate 12 over the weekend is bringing the energy of discernment and encouraging us to wait to speak or act or distribute even until there's a certain emotional clarity that arrives. The gate knows that words have weight, and that if we share truth, the truth that we've discovered over the course of this Sagittarius full moon, if we share that prematurely, we can create more harm than good. And so it's about discernment this weekend. So as the sun is moving through this gate, the collective field might feel quieter or more cautious or even more hesitant. And rather than feeling this as kind of a bad thing, I'd say it can very much be a positive thing, knowing that having restraint with our actions can be very caring, and the most impactful voice is not always the one to speak. So on Sunday, Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries is this square between emotional generosity versus kind of a seriousness around building and acting immediately. And so this square between Jupiter and Saturn is asking us to weigh what we're trying to grow against what we're truly ready to sustain. So Jupiter in Cancer, again, can really bring this energy of wanting to save the world, wanting to nurture everything, wanting to care for everything. And then that full moon in Sagittarius on Wednesday is saying, okay, but like you can't do everything. So where are you in this picture? Where is your human body? Where are your values? And then the square to Saturn on Sunday is asking us to put our money where our mouth is, kind of thing, and saying, okay, how are you going to make this happen? It can kind of feel like running into a wall. Like we've reached this beautiful Jupiter Cancer energy of like, I think a lot of people are excited about this transit. And so it's this big, open energy about care. And then immediately squaring Saturn as soon as it enters Cancer, it's really asking us to be real. And so it could feel like running into a wall, but that's that wall, that barrier that keeps your vision from collapsing, because it's asking you to mature your plans and where you need to reel it in a little bit, where your leadership needs restraint. So it goes hand in hand with the gate of caution. It is about discernment and restraint. It's asking us to, I like that it's in the beginning of this Jupiter in Cancer transit, because it is really asking us to define limits around what it is that we're feeding our energy into. And we're in a time when there is so much to put our energy into, that this whole astrology and energy of this week is really about that tension between what is possible and what we want to do, and then what it is for us to do, knowing that we're not in this alone, but we do have to choose what our specific role is in the revolution. So next week, Jupiter in Cancer is also making a square to Neptune in Aries. And so this Jupiter square Saturn energy with the Jupiter square Neptune energy is creating a little bit more of I'll say, like a mystical crucible. It's Saturn, is here bringing friction between our dreams and the discipline that's needed to create those dreams. And then next week, that will still be in effect when Neptune is exactly squaring Jupiter, adding kind of more of a tension between hope and illusion. So Jupiter wants to nourish and expand, and Neptune wants to dissolve boundaries entirely, and Saturn wants to create boundaries. And so this could definitely be a time of just a lot of confusion. I will say that we will be pretty sensitive over the weekend into next week. Throughout the next couple of weeks, there's a huge amount of possibility in the air, a huge amount of potential for what can be expanded, and changes that have come into effect with that gate of change, really shaking things up. And we're not just in that status quo anymore. There's something new happening in the world, and there's something new happening in our bodies. But without grounding into reality, this energy can lead to over-promising or overextending or chasing a vision that lacks roots. And so Saturn squaring Jupiter might provide the grounding force that we really need during this week. Saturn gets a bad rep sometimes when we have a Saturn square, a Saturn transit, but sometimes when there's a lot of Jupiterian or Neptunian energy, these big, dreamy expanders, Saturn might really kind of come in and put a few of the structures in place that are needed for that to come about and to exist in reality. So yeah, we're being asked this week to purify our dreams and to crystallize our place in the dream, but not get lost in the dreams or abandon them completely. So it's a potent week. There's a lot at play, and I hope this doesn't leave you feeling more confused than when we began. But it's, again, this truly beautiful polarity. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of expansion possible over the next couple of weeks. And then there's just a few little reminders to keep it real and to remember yourself in the big picture. And so, yeah, sit with your desires this week. Sit with your goals and your dreams and your communal hopes and care, and just sit with them and know if they're rooted in your specific sovereign truth or if they're just reacting to the moment. And trust your gut. Lean into your intuition, your womb space, the space that Cancer rules as Jupiter enters that beautiful nurturing space. So that wraps up June 9th to 15th. Again, check out my Jupiter and Cancer horoscopes on Substack, cyclesoftime.substack.com, for each rising sign to get a feel for how your life could be expanded over the coming year. And subscribe to my Substack there to get bonus posts that aren't on the podcast. As far as staying in touch, I'd love to stay in touch with y'all. So you can find me at astrosomatics.com for my different offerings, on Instagram at astro.somatics or Cycles of Time Podcast, or you can subscribe at cyclesoftimepodcast.substack.com to get this podcast in your inbox every Monday. And don't forget to click the subscribe button or leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast, or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you for being here. Before we fully wrap up, I wanted to invite you to a couple of things. One is my paid subscription on Substack is $8 a month. Cost of a fancy cup of coffee a month, and it's called Embody the Revolution. It's a membership where we're walking this wheel of the year in community and going a little deeper. There's these week by week podcasts and energy forecasts, of course, but with this membership paid subscription, you also get a detailed guidebook for each zodiac season that is a long, 50-page guidebook about each zodiac season that I handcraft and deliver to your inbox every month to kind of guide you along with journaling questions and the human design gates and the elemental prompts for the season. And so that's a really fun thing to receive. And there's also a monthly live breathwork journey on Zoom that I do at the beginning of each zodiac season to tap into the energies in our bodies. And with the subscription, you also get a calendar of all the astrology and human design transits of 2025 and 2026, and access to the group chat to ask questions and share in community. So I invite you to become a paid subscriber and join those live breathwork sessions, get that detailed guidebook every month to kind of help to ground into the seasons as they go by in this way. So you can join me on Substack for that. And if you'd like to join for a breathwork session to see what it's like before joining the full membership, the Cancer season Astro Breathwork Journey is going to be on Wednesday, June 12th. And these monthly sessions are just a great way to learn about the upcoming transits and integrate the themes of the season in your body. and release emotions that are no longer serving you. This type of breath work is great for that. So you can register on my website at astrosomatics.com or through the Substack. There's a link as well, and I'll post it in the show notes as well, to just jump into a little bit of a overview for the season ahead with all this Cancer energy in the field. So I'll leave you there. We're an hour in here. Thank you for being with me and choosing to listen to this as we dive into the week's energy every week. I'd love to hear from you, and I will see you again next week. Bye.